everyone, I'm Nettie Kay. Welcome back to my studio. Today I'd like to share with you some of my secrets on how to paint a really nice still life. I've got a still life set up here with a large, huge ginger pot and a tiny little ginger pot and a fresh bouquet of flowers that my neighbor inspired me with a little mason jar and some lemons. Now I've got one source of light as much as I possibly can control it, and so that I have light on one side and dark on the other. And this time I'm going to really try to keep this thing in a mysterious kind of mode where it kind of, the side of that great big huge ginger pot is going to just disappear into nothing. And we're going to talk about lost edges and soft edges and found edges a little bit in the next little while on this painting. So I've got a piece of canvas that I've just stretched. I haven't stretched, I just taped it up here, and it's the image will be about 18 by 24. So I've got the placement of my big huge ginger pot where I think I want it, and I have this jar right here. This is a mason jar, and I want to make sure that it is, and it does feel as though it's not quite, well, it's going to have to do. Okay, I'm going to move a few things around, but I'm going to bring, this is the cloth behind the mason jar. I've got this one. I'm wiping out some of the paint that's on there, revealing the light canvas beneath. Okay, and so now I realize my jar is kind of coming out over here, and I'm hoping it's not going to dry too fast. I'm going to now move my, I'm going to move this jar, this not mason jar, this little ginger pot. I'm going to rub that out a bit. It's going to take a little bit of doing. And I'm going to move it over by putting a little more thinner on my rag. And I've got this jar overlapping. It only overlaps at the top shoulder. I'm just realizing that. So it's one of those things where it goes across the glass like that and then comes down at a pretty abrupt angle. That's where I messed it up. It's not so much that it was, let's see, no, and then I want this coming in at about that angle. Okay, that's about right. So it's overlapping on the shoulder of the jar, but not above it. All right. We'll just make it work. And then on the other side, it looks really seriously fat. So I'm going to now go back in and wipe out this area and get that thing turned. See that? I can really get that light around it like this. And I want to get that fabric. We're going to get that fabric moving up just a little bit higher. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to look good, right? Or it has to be sensible. That's the main thing. It has to be sensible. So I want to make sure that we don't have anything that's kind of wonked out. And I'm also going to be very aware that the corner of, the apex where the light hits is not over here, it's over here. So I'm going to put that in like that. And of course, when we get into paint, you'll be able to see that a lot better. But meanwhile, then there's just this kind of fabric that just smushes over like that. Okay, well, we'll get this in at some point. But then the bottom of the jar kind of comes down. There's actually a light that's I'm seeing right here. And so I got to watch out for that. It's going to come in. Isn't this fun? Anyway, I'll get that at some point. But meanwhile, now I'm going to come up and I've got the jar, and then I've got this. This is where the highlight's going to be on that. I've got the little thing that comes up on top of the jar. A little bit of light comes down through this way. And of course, these lemons are going to be lit up really light on that front lemon, because that's the one that's going to catch the light. Okay, the back lemons are going to be less. Try not to paint everything in the same value, and if it's going back into space, it needs to be darker and less sharp, okay, more fuzzy. It is taking me a long time. a long time to understand that, number one, and then to implement it. We can understand things with our brain long before we can actually do it with our hand. So don't get discouraged. You know it's just going to take time. And so I've got this going. This is kind of pretty. I think it's going to be really nice. Okay, now I decided to paint with some white flowers this time. And so I've got this jar, and I'm realizing the jar, let's see, we've got a couple little lines that go on the jar, and then the flower is up a little bit here. So I'm going to just give it a space for one of the flowers right here. And then I have another, like a green one that comes up over here, a little green chrysanthemum, like that. So I'm just giving it a little bit of a spot to begin with, let's see, to find where I'm going to put those flowers. I used to watch Helen Van Wyck quite a bit, and she would always start with these, or she would actually paint them in kind of a brown paint. And I think, oh my gosh, how in the world is she ever going to get anything to come out of that? But she always did, and she would just make these blobs of paint. I think I prefer not making them in black or brown or whatever. There's this little thing that kind of comes out there. And of course you can arrange these flowers in any way that you want because it's your painting. It doesn't have to be exactly what you see. Just make it to where it actually works. Okay, so I've got that guy over there. I kind of like that. And then as it comes up, there's a bunch of little flowers that kind of come out like that. And then one that seems to be kind of aiming in that direction. So there's just some little itty bitty flowers that come out over there. Okay. And so I should probably do them with little Q-tips, but okay, so if we go like this, and then I'll just make some small little indications of where these flowers are going to go, and the edge of the jar again. Okay, there we go. So there is that. Now, what else can I do with this? I'm going to I'm going through a lot of thinner here. I got to find a little bit of light as it comes past here on to this part right here. So I'm going to lighten that up just a bit next to the jar. I think I'm going to pull that jar over. It feels like it's just crowded. Let's see. Well, I don't know. Got to just keep looking at it. Keep looking at it and then pulling out this light next to that. It's like a puzzle, everybody. It's like a puzzle, and you're just constantly, just pushing and pulling and trying to figure out what pieces go together. At the same time, creating art, you don't want to just, line one up with another. It isn't, it's trying to fit all of the elements together is what I'm saying. It's not really every little piece fitting exactly. What am I trying to say? That's what happens when you really get into your paint. You have no idea what you're saying. Okay, so I think this thing is going to actually move over a little bit. I've got a little reflected light here I might use. And this lemon over here is going to be really, really dark if it stays in the painting at all. And I think I want to take a tiny, tiny bit of light coming out from behind the vase over here. Okay. So that's basically how I'm going to start it. Let's see, maybe one or two more little things. All right, that thing feels really, really huge. I'm probably going to bring that down in size just a tiny bit. So I'm going to come down. This is the jar. I'm going to come down with the jar like this, and that's going to be part of the fabric. So I'll cut that in. There. That's kind of glowy, isn't it? Yeah. So now I'll just cut that in a little bit to where the jar is a little bit narrower. And then we'll see if we can get things going. There's going to be a little bit of light, and there's going to be a light, middle tone, and dark to every element. But some of those lights are going to be lighter, such as the light on the end of this lemon is going to be a whole heck of a lot lighter than the light on the lemon behind it again. And so I'm going to take that part and say, okay, that's where that light's going to go. And then there's this little doodad sticking out there, little point of the lemon there. And then over here I've got just a slight dusting, just a tiny bit of reflected light. Not much, everybody. And then beside the jar, let me see, I'm gonna double check. This means like measure 5 times, cut once kind of thing. There we go. Gotta find it. Before I go to paint, I want to make sure that I've got things as close as I possibly can. Here's a nice reflected light, and in the bottom of the jar I'm going to put that, a little bit of light coming up into the jar. I want that jar to really be beautiful and light and reflective without being, you know, fussy. Okay, so now I'll drag this up like that. And the thing that I really want to think about is, okay, I've got this here, and the flowers are going to be really, really bright. And so the flowers are really, in essence, going to be on my 1/3, almost 1/3 right here. My 1/3 in, 1/3 over, in that general, you know, rule of thirds. That's going to be my focus right here rather than anything in the middle. And so I can choose that, I can choose that, I can choose here, I can choose here. Well, I'm going to put my focus of thirds right about in here. And so that's going to be my brightest bright, is going to be that wonderful white up against the dark behind. And it's just going to jump up and shout, and I'm going to be so excited when we go to paint. Okay, now I'm going to take a little break. I'm going to take a look at this and see how we're doing. Okay, be right back. Okay, now I took a little bit of a break, and I just kind of looked at it and kind of made sure everything was in the right position. I moved the jar, this big old jar. It was over here. I moved it over by almost 2 inches. I think that's how far over I went. And then it started making a little bit more sense. I wanted to give it a little bit more space to breathe, and that's kind of what the setup was doing anyway. These are the flowers, or where the flowers are going to go. I've got this, the little ginger pot lined up with the jar, and everything seems to be in order. Ooh, I hope. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to think about what's happening in here, and so I'm going to think about the background a little bit. I'm going to take some of this Terra Rosa color with my dark turquoise. All right, I'm going to try to see what happens if I come up and I take the top of this pot, and I'm going to make it dark, a little bit dark right around here, so that the light will shine a little bit better, and then hopefully we'll be able to see some of the various shapes that I put in a little bit better, and you'll be able to see that side of the pot by darkening up a little bit the background. I don't want it to be garishly different, because that's really not the focus. The flowers are going to be the focus. And so now I'll take, let's see, I've got my paint way too far away here. That's just dumb. I'm going to take some white. I'm going to take a little bit of a gold color in here, and I want to make it feel a little bit more like a little sunlight, a little more sunlight or more light from the window. And we'll come across, I want this part to still stand out, but I don't want this to be so dark that it's just gloomy. And so I'm going to come around here and then find the side of the jar and begin to kind of carve out some of the flower shapes like this. Where does that flower go? Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. I'm going to jump over the jar and then put this one in with that little lighter color on that side. Yeah. I'm going to get some yellow ochre at some point and we'll put that in nicely, but I want this flower here, and so I'm just laying this out. You know, we're not going to go too far with this today, but I wanted to show you the beginning And then I've got some flowers up here. I want to darken that so that those flowers really pop out when I go to put them on. So I'm going to take this dark from here. I'll just use that as a palette and begin to pull those out a little bit like that. I'm shaping it by painting around the negative shapes around the objects a little bit. That seems to work. And then I want to put in a little bit of a shadow down here. So I've got, I'm just going to grab my turquoise with my Terra Rosa and giving it kind of a nice, really nice dark shadow. So these lemons are a little bit interesting. I'm still trying to debate on whether or not I'm going to put a lemon here. I might. I can't make up my mind. So we'll put this in a dark tonal value because I kind of want this thing to disappear a little bit. The side of the jar to kind of almost disappear. Just never have quite the guts to do it. I'm going to take that lemon out for now. If I want to put it back in, I will, but I'm not going to do that right at the moment. A little more teal, I think. That's a nice color for a shadow. Terra Rosa and teal. This part right here is a light that's shining through. And then I'm going to give this a little shadow here, a little shadow beside the jar there, otherwise it's going to look transparent. And then, let's see, where else? I'm going to just solidify that. I've got a really dark greenery thing happening in the jar right there. So we'll get into that. But you see, I'm not fussing around and drawing all the leaves in. I'm just kind of massing in the shapes, and that's about it, really. And now I'm going to come in with a little bit of that lighter yellowish color in white with a little bit of yellow on there. And I'm just going to bring it up a little bit at a time. I'm not going to get too crazy and make a big, huge jump. I want to just bring it up a little tiny bit at a time and then add a little light there just so it starts glowing a little bit, and then a little bit more and a little bit more. Ooh, it's so exciting. And then as I come up, then I'll add those lights right in here. I'm going to save my flowers for a little bit later. We're just going to work on this part. Now this goes into a shadow-ish thing, so I'm just going to move that paint around to where it feels like it's a shadow right next to the jar. And of course this is not the color of the jar. The jar is in a kind of a cobalt blue, and so when I get to it, we will shift. I'm only concerned with tonal values and placement right at this point. So I know that can be a little bit confusing, but that's what I'm doing. Okay, now this is just a light that's coming through underneath. I wanted to get that in so I don't forget it. And I'll bring in a little bit more light up here on the front to kind of indicate the top of the table. What else have I got going? All right, now I want to come in with a little more of the light. Where's that? Oh, here it is, right here. There's a serious light right here between the ginger pot and the jar. And then this part comes in a little bit lighter there too. Okay, and then it also ties together with what's happening on the outside of the ginger pot on that side, so I'm going to really brighten that up so this makes sense. It's not going to make sense if I don't have something that kind of connects to it. So there we go. And then I'll come up. I don't want to get too much into my highlights now, but I do. I just want to jump right into them. I want to see how high up I need to go. You know, sometimes we wait until the very end and put in the highlights at the very end, but sometimes I like to eat my dessert first. I do. Okay. Now, let's see. Here's a little highlight there, and then I'm going to make sure I remember. Oh, I see. There's a light that comes around the water line. And then we're going to put in some of those stems and stuff. Stems are really fun. You can paint them in, or you can paint the whole thing green and then paint around the stems, and that makes it really look interesting too. So we should try a couple of different ways over the next year. I'm going to be doing all kinds of things this year. I hope you will join me and keep going with the stuff that we're going to be doing. It's going to be so fun. And I'm really looking forward to hooking up with some of you guys on Patreon. That's my big fun thing where we can chat and have conversations, and I'm hoping to be able to take a look at some of your work so that I can help you a little bit more, all right? And I'm still waiting to get up to that 20 people 20 members yet on my Patreon site. So what does that mean? Well, if you guys are in the first 20 people that come in to the membership on my Patreon at Nettie K, and then you get one of those little paintings that I've done, a little 5x7 flat canvas oil painting, and of the two pairs. And so you can have one, to put on your refrigerator if you like. Okay, so that's the beginning. All right, I'm going to take a break now, and we're going to be filming part 2 the next time we meet. And I'm going to be doing a really wild and crazy deer head, a portrait of a deer, coming up in the next few lessons as well. But I thought I'd show you this one that I'm really excited about, and we'll get on to the next layer the next time we meet. All right, love you guys, and we'll talk to you again soon. Don't forget to check out that Patreon site. I don't mean to be a big commercial, but I'd really appreciate it if you would. Okay, talk to you later. Bye for now.